interdepartmental charges should all balance out. So when we're presenting kind of in a pie graph of saying these are our big county expenses, salaries, materials, that's all money flowing out of the county. Interdepartmental charges is money flowing within the county.
Very good point, Madam Mayor. That portion of interdepartmental charges, I believe that's the smallest. Is that the 8%? Anyway, that's the amount that we are charging the rate budget. So yes, it all does come to zero. I think it was about 500,000, the difference. So that it's the portion that we charge the rate budget.
If it's the portion that you charge the rate budget, wouldn't that be a revenue source? It's okay, we can come back. I just, for me personally, when we look at, an organization and you say, okay, in aviation, fuel's your biggest cost, labor's your biggest cost. I just find when we include interdepartmental charges like that, I understand if there's a portion being charged to rate budget, but that's money that should be coming back in. This would suggest that this is money that we're paying out somewhere.
I do understand where you're coming from. When we used to actually present the budget, interdepartmental charges net of revenue, so you didn't see a recovery within the revenue area. It was, at that time, it was very difficult for everyone to understand interdepartmental charges, and this seemed to be the easiest way to do it, yes. So let us have a look at it. Maybe we can present it also differently. But
I just, once we get through into the departments, I've got some concerns with some of the way the interdepartmental charge is working. So I just wanted to kind of bring that up now. But
Sorry, we do have an answer. That charge, sorry, I got mixed up between the revenue and the charges, but the charge, we end up charging the rate budget for the fire hydrants. The rate budget pays for a portion, or maybe you can explain it better, Kat.
So maybe I'll go back to the interdepartmental slide if that's okay. Just to go back a few here. So you'll notice under the rate budget, they are also recovering $4.7 million. That's not, they're recovering a portion of that within their own division, but approximately $2 million or more is actually recovered from the levy budget for fire services. It's for the cost for fire protection services. We used to call it it used to be called a fire hydrant service, and it was charged out based on the number of hydrants within areas. Now it's become part of the water and wastewater model developed by DFA, sorry. So that's what that charge is. Or that's what you see as the expenditure on the levy side of the budget.
So 8% of our total expenditures in Norfolk County go to interdepartmental charges to the rate budget for fire hydrants. So 8% of our interdepartmental charges, 8% of our total expenditures for county budget operations, the argument is that's going to fire hydrants for the rate budget? That seems extraordinary. I mean, when salaries and benefits are 36%, that's 8%? That's crazy.
Madam Mayor, so the fire is not 8%, it's 1.9 million, which would be a little bit over almost 2%. So that's the amount of the fire. We can get more information on the other charges.
That'd be great. Thanks.
I think what's not possibly offsetting it is the recoveries are not showing, interdepartmental recoveries are not showing as a separate item in the next pie chart, so we'll try and have a look at that so it's easier to explain to you.
That's no problem if we've got some recovery coming back there, but at the same time, that's also quite extraordinary when you think about it, that 8% of county expenditures are I see what you're saying now. I have you. I get your point. Ms. Huffman, Councillor Huffman.
Martin. It's early. Kathy, I'm wondering if you could speak on page 18, the major revenue sources, just enlighten me a little bit about the fees and service charges. Would you be able to just list off a few that are included in there?
Through the mayor to Councillor Martin, within fees and service charges, you'll have all the all related to all the user fees that you approved earlier in December. So it'll include all your planning fees, building permit fees, ice rental fees.
Okay, I can fill you in a little. The reason why I ask is because it was my understanding that these were all cost recovery, so they still are included because they flow through the revenue, even though it's cost recovery on those user fee increases we passed?
So through the mayor to Councillor Martin, so terminology is important. When we say revenues, that's not profit. So revenues is basically, most of it is 100% cost recovery, so we don't make any money on the fees. Actually, we lose money on a lot of the fees. So so when we say major revenue sources, that's not a profit term.
Thank you.
And sorry, Kathy, if I could just jump back in again. My apologies. 500 looks like $500,000. 515,400 is that amount going over there. So hopefully at some point we'll learn more about what that's all about. Thanks.
Sorry. The next slide is just, I believe it's actually included in the budget document, and it's just at a very high level. Some of the known estimated surplus and deficits that we do know of at this point in time prior to our year-end final entries and audits. So you can see supplementary taxes, a surplus of $800,000 offset by some tax penalties of $535,300. Overall, the estimated budget to actual surplus deficit at this time, we've estimated at just over $582,000. Sorry, deficit. The next table is the total, outlines the total total tax increase. Again, this is included in our budget report. It's the change over 2018 will be approximately $127.55 for the average residential property for a 4.7% increase. We've broken out here where the education, where we're coming, reduction of the 1.7%. The next chart is outlining, provides a historical residential tax impact from 2014. It includes the proposed tax impact also for 2019 based on the proposed budget. This assumes a 1.7% reduction in education tax rates. As you can see again, 2014 it was 1.4%. Up to 2.3 in 2015 and 18, and so far for 2019, the proposed budget includes a 4.7% request, an increase in tax rates. This slide shows based on an average residential tax bill, how your tax bill or where your money goes, how the allocation of services is based on a property assessment of $233,250 for total taxes of $2,831.44. As you can see, the roads operation is one of the largest components, 16.9%. Health and social services is minor, 5.8%. It is a large budget, but what's represented here are net of any funding. So there's the health and social services area is heavily funded, so there's less tax dollars going to subsidize or to provide the service for health and social services.
So just We like this slide. This is a really good slide. Perhaps council could take advantage of as well. A lot of times, the general public, and no fault of their own, but they just don't realize all the value they get out of their property taxes. And this slide is a very good slide which shows where your tax dollars go. Everything from roads, like what Kathy mentioned, to health and social services. That bar doesn't do it justice for the amount of expenses that go into that area, and there's other areas there as well. So just wanted to highlight that slide.
Okay. Actually, James, I'm turning it over to you.
So I told Kathy earlier that I wanted to hijack her presentation. And I wanted to start with a very busy slide, but I don't want to get into a lot of details on that slide. So if you can just go to, basically this one is, it's a year over year of our budgets, comparing our expenses and revenues. And so if you go to the next slide. All right, so until we get to that slide, oh, that's not good. All right, so basically, when we pass our budgets, it's what we call a modified accrual basis, and that's, there's a lot of cash transactions that happen that are not included in our regular financial reporting, or they're reconciled because. For example, the revenues might spike one year, and that revenue is a result of a lot of reserve fund contributions. Or the expenses might spike one year because we decided to increase our contributions to the reserves, and both of those are not considered technically revenue or expenses, so they're reconciled out for our financial statement. So a really good example is amortization, which is not included in your budgets. However, if we didn't have a reserve to purchase a truck, for example, and a truck costs $50,000, we would have the levy pay for that. So that would be a $50,000 hit on your levy in 1 year. However, when we put it into PSAB and for accounting regulations, we spread that expense over 5 years, so it's $10,000 a year. So it basically puts the dollars in the right buckets, and it puts the dollars in the right time time period. So as a result, entities like Standard & Poor's, our banks, whoever needs to see how our county is doing, they ask for our financial statements, because our financial statements are following generally accepted accounting practices, or PSAB, and making sure all the dollars are in the right areas in order to effectively see what the performance is like. And so this is the slide I was talking to you about. So you can see it's pretty erratic. I mean, every year there's no consistency, and that's what you get with a modified accrual basis. So if you go to the next slide. So this one here, the next few slides are all based on our financial statements, and so I wanted to let council know how Norfolk County is doing, and basically where we're going. And yes, we have a 8.6% levy increase or a 4.7% tax increase for the median homeowner, but that's the reason why we are proposing those amounts is it's a long-term plan to bring Norfolk County in a better financial state. We have already had Standard & Poor's give us a heads up that if we don't do something about it, our credit rating will go down. And there's other there's other items as well. We're going to become more reliant on debt, and we all know debt is more expensive than using reserves and putting money away for reserves when it comes to replacing capital. So this slide here, this is our net debt balance. So this is a technical term on our financial statements. If your assets are less than your liabilities, then that's a net debt situation. So that's where Norfolk County is in right now, and I'm not sure if you remember from our special finance day, I did some comparators with other municipalities, and Norfolk County was one of the only ones below the magic line. So the magic line there is zero, and there have been years where we've been above. We've had a surplus situation, and but however, you can see the trend going into more and more of a net debt situation. Now that spike that you see there, that's when we sold Norfolk Hydro, and we were able to take advantage of those extra funds. However, the reason why it went down quite a bit afterwards is for a number of reasons. One of them being we had an increase of debt that year of $10 million, so that is a major reason. We had our cash had a major decline from that year, so as a result of not a lot of cash on hand, our investment return wasn't as well that year as well. So these items combined resulted in 2015 going below the zero mark. Sorry, was there a question?
Yes. So I understand the spike in 2014. What is the explanation for the nice number there in 2009?
So 2009, that's when we had healthy reserves. You'll see in the year-end report, we do put a chart in there every year on where our reserves were in 2009, and I believe just for our net reserves back then was about $46 million. Now it's down to about 22. So I got a slide here that sort of shows that as well.
So like there's basically that over the last 8 years, it's just been a continual depletion.
That's correct, and that's been, sorry, through the chair to Councillor Huffman, that has been communicated by our auditor when he comes and does a presentation on our year-end financial statements. It's been communicated by previous treasurers and so on and so forth. So, so you're correct in that assessment.
Do you know by chance what the tax increase was in 2012 to 2013, when they actually, that's the only point in that chart where besides
You want to go back to?
the spike with the sale that is actually showing an improvement?
Tax increase for...
I don't recall it being anything unusual other than the trend that we've seen, 1.4 to 2 point. I don't think that there was a big tax hike that year. I think what they did is they got themselves in order and they got their expenses in order in that period.
Oh, okay.
Councillor Van Passen.
Okay, go to the next.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I actually have those numbers because those ones I looked up first when I started reading this binder. In 2012, tax levy was 65.7 million. By 2018, it was 84.2 million. So we've collected 18 million a year more in taxes. And over that same period of time, our debt went from 28 million to 59, or almost 60 million. Our reserves dropped from 48 to 21. So we've gone backwards by almost $60 million in the last 8 years, even though we're collecting 20% more taxes. That trend has to stop. Right?
I agree.
Councillor Morrissey? Michelle, sorry.
Mr. Johnson, you indicated that on the previous slide that the spike in our surplus was due to the sale of Norfolk Hydro, and then you said that the precipitous drop on the chart was caused by a $10 million debt. Can you identify what the source of that debt was?
Yes, so just to clarify, this, I shouldn't have used the word surplus. It's a little misleading because we're talking about surpluses and deficits on our operating budget. So these are balance sheet numbers. These are assets over liabilities. So basically, it's a snapshot on how the county is every year, and so that's what that reflects. Now, as far as the debt that we issued in 2014, Kathy will look that up, but it's probably related to some water and wastewater plants that were constructed during that time. Okay, so, all right, so our famous roads reserve, which is not in good shape, we did have a report in 2017 to bring that, we had a basically $20 million deficit in that reserve, and we have a plan to bring that back into black. However, we did have to issue some debt in 2014 to replace roads. And that's what, I kind of mentioned that earlier. Unless we do something about our reserves, we will have to issue debt again just to replace assets rather than using our own reserves.
Thank you.
So so this chart here, again, it's based on our financial statements. And it's a chart that basically lets you know what our debt per household is. So you can see in 2009 it was around $1,000 per household, and now it's growing. It's pretty much doubled to $2,000 per household. Now, I just want, even though debt is bad, there are some debt that is good, and our debt situation for Norfolk County presently is it's about 6% of our operating revenues, and that's not a bad figure for a municipality. However, what I wanted to let council know is next year we're scheduled to add more debt, and then in 2021 we're scheduled to add even more debt to that. So it's the trend that I'm worried about, not our current debt situation. So I wanted to make that clear.
And Mr. Johnson, there is a ceiling that municipalities should not hit or exceed in debt to operate. Can you expand on that?
Of course. So provincial guidelines, so this is a percentage of debt repayment, I believe, of our operating revenues is the statistic. Currently, Norfolk County is around 5.8 to 6%. The province allows you to go up to 25%. That's a little excessive. If we go up to 25% of debt, you can only imagine what our debt repayments would be on our operating levy, because that's where it ends up. If you take out debt, your principal and your interest repayments have to be borne by the taxpayer. So a lot of municipalities sort of have what they call a self-imposed debt limit, and typically they use between 10 and 15% based on what their needs are, and that's something that we are working on to try to bring to council a debt management policy, just because the trend of using debt going forward, we wanted to put some sort of council approved policy in place.
And does Norfolk County have a self-imposed debt limit currently?
Through the mayor to Councillor Martin, no, we don't have one currently, but that's what we're working on.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a quick question. You talk about debt at 6. You're talking about debt servicing, right? You're not talking about the actual debt. You're talking about the payments we got to make on that debt is 6%.
That's correct.
Thank you.
So the next slide, again, to what Councillor Huffman was alluding to, our reserves per household. You can see in 2009 it was almost $1,800, and it's basically has a downward trend to 2017. Now in 2018 there was an approval to increase our contributions to our reserves, and in 2019 we're proposing some more increases to contribution reserves so we can bring that number back up. So this slide is interesting. It shows the taxes per household going up. And you can see that the bottom part is the taxation revenue and the top part is our other revenue, which includes grants from the province and the federal government. And you can see though that amount has been slowing down or being reduced, and basically we're making up for it on our tax dollars. So the part of the increase in taxes that you see every year is a result of lower revenues and lower grants from the upper levels of government. So the downloading of a service, we would be, back in 2001, they downloaded Provincial Offences Act to us, and we are left with providing the staff and to sort of do the logistics with that area. And as the offset was supposed to be through the UMP funding, I believe. And the province has continually been reducing that UMP funding year over year over year. So yes, that is definitely part of it. So this slide is the expenditures per household, and the reason why there's a large decrease in 2011, that wasn't a miracle year by any means. That was, the province actually uploaded something that year, and it's ODSP, which stands for, okay, of course you would know that. So that was about a $22 million item, but what I want to make sure council understands is even though our expenses went down, our revenues went down the same rate. So that was pretty much a 100% funded area. Okay. So that slide shows the expenditures per household is creeping up, and there are many reasons for that. The cost of asphalt has gone up more than CPI. The cost of buying heavy machinery is also going up. I was having a discussion with Chris Baird and one of his managers in directors, in Public Works, and just doing these tenders for, I believe it was a lot greater. It used to be 200,000 about 4 or 5 years ago, and now they're asking about 360, 370 for this same piece of equipment. So but I think that graph shows that increase of expenditures per household is in line with CPI and other economic factors. Next slide. Okay, so before I let Kathy finish, I just wanted to highlight, so I wanted to highlight the financial situation of Norfolk County per our financial statements. And if there's any questions about any of those numbers, please let me know. But I also wanted to make council aware of the amount of funding that we just don't know that we're receiving in 2019. Usually we know the UMP funding by now, but they haven't released that information yet. You know, I'm sure Marlene can speak on her area on the amount of funding that they haven't been given any notice on some of it. So it's an unusual budget year to be budgeting with those unknowns. So having said that, I'll hand it over to Kathy.
Thank you. Just to finish up here, we just have a small list of challenges that we outlined. There are a number of other challenges, but the majority of the challenges that we've been faced are the basic challenge is to find a balance that meets council and community expectations for the service levels that we do currently provide, and also the balance with taxation. We do have inflationary pressures. They continue as the cost of service and materials can also continue to rise. We have increased government legislative requirements, downloads, and some pressures. Some of the areas we talk about funding, the provincial government will indicate that the program is 100% funded. A lot of that is 100% funded but capped to a certain level. So Norfolk County is picking up a part of the levy. For example, in the health area, one of the areas could, for the program-based, the funding is 100%, supposed to be 100% funding, or let's say 75% funding, up to a cap of $4 million. But it may be up much, so when we actually allocate all the costs to that program, we're actually not sharing 25%. That share is much higher. It probably works out to around 32% or higher for that. So we have those pressures. A lot of the, they'll say the funding is 100% for a new program, but in actual fact, it's just to fund one FTE. But if you include all the other costs related to providing that program, again, Norfolk County, sharing with Alderman County, of course, is picking up those costs. We also have challenges with our reserve balances that we've been talking about. We have limited and provincial funding streams. It's becoming very competitive, especially with the infrastructure grants. There are a number of them that we have applied for. We're not always successful in receiving the grants or being successful applicants. James already mentioned the provincial funding for the UMF. As far as we've anticipated in the budget, we've included, again, it's just an estimate of $200,000 reduction in UMF funding based on the trends that we've had in the last few years. We have been given no indication what is actually going to be awarded. And we have increasing police costs. We're dealing with asset management initiatives to adhere to PSAP regulations. Other areas are aging infrastructure. Again, we heard that from a lot during our capital deliberations, and also there's just things like climate change. We could have a really bad winter, and that affects our whole budget related to, for example, for winter control. So those are some of the challenges that when developing the budget is definitely, there's a lot of estimates. It's our best estimate as staff and looking at historical information or trends. And if we definitely have confirmation of information, it has been included. So on that note, that's the end of our slide presentation. Again, there's probably lots more we could put in it. So if we are missing any information that you require, please let us know and we'll definitely get that information for you.
Thanks, Kathy. One question, Marlene, this is just a little bit of a heads up when we come to the health and social services, but one of the things that I am going to be interested in is how many of these sort of fully funded positions do we have? How many are partially funded? Have we had some of those positions that were once fully funded but are now canceled or reduced in their government funding? Things along those lines. Anybody else? We have presentations at 11, so I'm thinking it might be a good time for a coffee break and so on, but if anybody has some questions first. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor Chop. If we go back to page 20, the forecasted actuals, which deficits here were funded through the contingency reserve? I think that's where the contingency reserve comes in.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Taylor. So those particular deficits have not been funded yet. So what we normally do is we wait for year end to occur and get the final audit because there's always items that are adjusted with an audit. So what will happen is if we have an excellent crystal ball and we actually do have a $582,000 deficit, then that will be funded from the contingencies reserve as an aggregate basis.
Councillor Michelli.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to go back to the major expenditures pie graph on page 17. We have indicated there that we spend 36% of our total budget on salaries and benefits. Is there a way that we can have a comparator to see what that percentage is in other jurisdictions?
Through the mayor to Councillor Michelli, that is definitely something we can pull together. It would take us a bit of research in order to do that. We'd have to go into comparable municipalities and pull those numbers.
And the reason I'm asking is I just, curious if that is a fairly typical percentage or if it's higher or lower than some other areas that maybe are, especially those jurisdictions that are closer to Norfolk. Thank you.
I have a question actually back on the slide that Councillor Taylor just raised on page 20. I'm just curious with the forecasted deficit for 2018, when was that snapshot taken? I remember an article back last September about the winter control costs, and I'm pretty sure it said it was 1.7 million back then, and we did have some, not a lot, thank goodness, before January, but I'm pretty sure we had some snow action going on.
To Madam Mayor, so we did do a report related to winter control in, I believe it was September, before the winter, and at that point it was only $1 million. Not only $1 million, that's horrible to say. However, that was the deficit at that point, and then we've had, I believe, 6 occurrences in December, 5 occurrences in December, and about between 100 and 150,000 each occurrence is basically, it's a high level estimate. That's why it's up to 1.7 million right now.
Okay, thanks. Anything further? Oh, Councillor Columbus.
Yes, Mr. Johnson, can you explain on page 20 the tax penalties line of a deficit of 535,300?
Thank you, through the mayor to Councillor Columbus. So that is the reason why in the 2019 budget we've adjusted the tax penalty amount to better reflect actual. So what that is what the tax penalty amount is, basically we expect to collect a certain amount of tax penalties based on our tax arrears. However, because Sue Bugner's staff are very good at collecting taxes, we're not collecting as much interest revenue. So that's the reason why that's there.
Okay, so that's interest dollars. Okay, thanks.
Sorry about that variance, I got it. It's $1 million. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Chop. The POA revenues, a deficit of 326,000. I did read in our operating budget that we're actually over 6 million. Is that accurate in unpaid POA fines?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Martin, that's an excellent question. So I know generally how the POA works. However, if Mr. Slichenkov wants to pipe in, he certainly can. So that 6 million is a result of provincial downloading in 2001. So that at that point, I think we got 2 million or something like that, in outstanding fines that was sort of handed to the municipality. And that amount has grown to 6 million over 18 years. And that amount, we actively try to collect on it through collection agencies and so on and so forth. However, these are, I don't mean to generalize, but these are typically residences with no fixed address or businesses that have gone out of business. Things of that nature on why it's hard to collect those amounts.
Councillor Columbus, did I see a hand? No. The collection agency that we use for that, how long have we been using them for?
That I would have to defer to someone else to answer. I'm not sure if we have that on hand.
I know we don't use one, we actually use a couple at least. As far as the specifics and how long we've been using them, we'd have to get back to you on that, and certainly we could have that available when we get into the operationals.
Just one more question there, Yakov, then. Do you know that, do we pay a rate or do we pay on a commission basis? Because my understanding from a couple conversations was we're paying a rate. Is that true?
So I don't know your differentiation between rate and commission, but my understanding is that there's a percentage that is added on top of the fine, and that is then deferred to the individual that is paying that fine.
So we only pay if there's collection. I guess that's the way I should have put it.
That's right.
Okay. I would be interested in learning some more about who we use and what our contract with them is like. There's some new services out there now. There's some law firms even actually that have started a kind of a unique kind of collection agency type process where they're just easily litigating and then, garnishing wages and so on to be able to do recoveries on this type of thing. I'm sure you pay a lot more for the service, but when the fees are, when we're seeing $6 million on the books, considering something like that might be prudent.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor.
Yes, sir.
So we've had 3 requests so far for extra information. I just wanted to clarify, sometimes when council asks for information, sometimes it's better in a report format or an email with information or something along those lines. So I was hoping I could clarify what council expects as the follow-up information. So the first item is the information on interdepartmental charges. I thought maybe an email would suffice with that information.
I think the interdepartmental charges, I'm hoping we'll be able to kind of keep getting into that as the days go on here.
Okay. And then Councillor Michelle's request for the percentage of salaries at other municipalities, how would you like that brought back to you?
Again, I think Councillor Michelle's probably getting at this is something he would be interested in hearing through the budget deliberations, not in a couple weeks from now once we've already settled on things.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That's exactly what I would like.
Is there anybody that might be able to do a little research on that? I mean, just would be pulling up some audited statements from Haldeman and a couple of the other.
Yes, we will attempt to have that information.
Okay. And then as far as the collection agencies, I think that could come back in a report to council at a later date so that we can investigate potential options to maybe make changes to our existing policy and program.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Councilor Martin?
Thank you, Mayor Chop. If I may add to that, a general question. I wonder why this falls a little bit under HR and a little bit under your department. It would, unless I'm missing something, it would make sense to me that the finance department would handle that. So maybe you can fill me in. And additionally, I'm wondering if we're taking advantage of writing off some of these collections and what that looks like. So if that information could also come back to council, that would be very helpful for me. Thank you.
I can answer the first question right off the hop. So Yakov Chenkov is a general manager of employee and corporate services, and underneath that umbrella, there's a corporate support services area, which looks after the POA. So that's Shelley Darlington is the director of that area, and they look after purchasing as well, and in some other areas that sometimes they're under finance, sometimes they're not. It's just the org structure that Norfolk County has.
Councilor Shelley, then Councilor Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Johnson, just as I indicated earlier, the comparator that I'm asking for, it doesn't have to be a comprehensive province-wide one, but just something that, maybe the contiguous jurisdictions would be sufficient. Thank you.
Councilor Taylor.
And thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Sletrenkov, it looked like you were going to jump in there with a point of clarification. I just wonder if that is what you're going to do.
I just wanted to clarify, and we'll bring a report back if council's seeking surrounding the collections piece. So as far as the companies we use, we do run an RFP process by which we outline the things we're looking for, and companies sort of, as part of the RFP process, go through that, and that's how we end up with the companies that we end up. So we can provide further sort of historical information and some background knowledge in that, as you request.
Well, I understand we run an RFP process, and it may be the lowest bidder that charges the lowest commission, but when we have $6,000 worth of fines sitting on the books, I'm not really happy with the company that we're using. So that's why I'm kind of curious to get some more information on that to see if maybe we should be looking for the best company and not the cheapest company. Councilor Martin, you had something to add to that?
6 million.
What, I don't know what I just said. Oh, 6
Okay,
million.
I know
Sorry.
you know,
My
I just wanted to
apologies.
clarify.
Anyone else? Okay, let's have a break till 11 o'clock.
On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario, south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just the place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Norfolk, 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 you won't be a stranger long. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario, south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Norfolk, Norfolk, my Southern County home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work, we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just the place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a Southern County home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Norfolk, 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 you won't be a stranger long. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario, south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a Southern County home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Up north on a strip of sand. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario, south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a Southern County home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my Southern County home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work, we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just the place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a Southern County home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Norfolk, 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 you won't be a stranger long. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario's south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a Southern County home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow.